Stories are answers to the questions we would rather not confront. My name is Osadumebi, and every week I will tell you a short story written by a Nigerian writer or author. That's the long and short of it. So without much ado, this week's story is by Olaitan Akinfenwa, and it's titled, Where Do We Go From Here? Did you always love him this much? My husband asks, his back turned to me, rigid and in silent distress. I could not speak. The words were there in my chest, but they cowered and melted when they got to my lips, and so I sighed. I could only sigh. After what felt like eons, he walked off into the bedroom. I couldn't move, so I just stood and stared blankly, empty wine glass in hand. What could I say? The truth? Must it be spoken? Must it be admitted? Must the forbidden haunt me so even after all these years? Even after my escape into marriage? Must it find me here still? I don't know how long it took, but I finally floated in after my husband. He was in a dimly lit bedroom, in bed, staring down at his feet. Not staring at the ceiling, but at his feet, which were wagging nervously. At first, I thought his eyes were closed, but his eyelids moved, and I saw he was still wide awake. I slipped into bed and turned my back to him, daring to breathe. We couldn't sleep, so we just lay there, strangers who shared a home, breathing in the cold, acidic air of disloyalty and hurt. Yes, I said in response to the hard question hanging between us. Yes, I've always loved him. I loved him so hard since I was 19. Even before I knew what the word really meant, I just loved him. I sighed again, recalling the ache of years past. It was this senseless, helpless love which he did not deserve from me. It was this ache, this unspoken cry, this soundless pang. That was how I loved him. Babe, I never should have. And yes, I should have stopped. I always knew that. But damn me, I loved him madly. My husband was silent. I turned to face him so he could see there was no malice in my eyes, only helpless truth. I saw he had a line of tears streaming down his right eye into his ear, a silent acceptance of the truth. I continue. I swear it, babe. I did not plan this encounter with him. I was just as shocked when I saw him again after so long. This was 3 months ago when he was transferred here. It was like an old nightmare come alive. A nightmare I hadn't had in the last 5 years. My husband scoffed. If you did not intend to pursue anything with him, then why did you never mention him to me? You're telling me he came back into our lives 3 months ago and you never said anything? You know I worried. And I asked you. I asked you several times what was wrong when you kept retreating into your shell. Why didn't you casually mention him or something? Because there was nothing casual about him. Don't you see? He tortured me just by breathing. Unintentionally or maybe intentionally. I don't know. My mind wandered briefly. I saw him every day at work, meters away from me, running into him every single day, reliving years past over and over. I was fighting for my sanity and my marriage. How could I bring that up casually? My mind returned to our conversation. With him there, I was always tensed up. With desire, he scoffed. With rage at him, I cried, inclining up with my elbows. That is how he gets to me. It's how he always did. He upsets me. I don't know how to say it. It was just this tension and anger at how he had not cared about my suffering when he drifted from me abruptly. And how dare he? How dare he just waltz back into my life to upend all I have carefully built and nurtured? My husband sighed. A pained sigh. Then he finally turned to look at me. We were on our sides, facing each other and staring into each other's tear-streaked face. Truly naked for the first time in these past months. It was today I had the long silenced conversation with him. He initiated it, asking me why I was being unstable at work. I was incredulous, because how could he ask that? How could he play dumb to everything I was going through? So we got talking about the past, about unspoken feelings and unheard tortures. It was supposed to be some sort of closure at last. But then he said he was actually tired of faking it, denying it to himself. He admitted that he had been just as haunted as I had been, and that he knew I was here before he transferred, so he opted hoping we could mend stuff. Gosh, if only we had gotten closure years ago, this prolonged burning would have been avoided. But somehow, he just kissed me, and that's what you walked in on. I took a deep breath and let it out. A weight of 3 months. Heck, of 15 years. That is exactly what you saw, baby. 1 weak, fleeting moment of a 15-year-long hunger for the boy I had been madly in love with as a young girl, with feelings I have never resolved. Hearing that he felt the same way, it consumed me. Gosh, I'm ashamed to admit it, but nothing else mattered in that moment. That is what you saw. And it rightly justified your rage 100 times over. It did. But I'm so glad you came in right then. It's crazy admitting all this, but it is the truth. Baby, I need you. I need you to help me be free of his pull on me, now more than ever. I can't fight alone anymore. Please, let's fix this. I cannot lose this fight to him. How can I do that? You love him. You're his, not mine. He made that clear. And even you couldn't deny it. The pain in his voice spoke volumes. I recalled the pandemonium which had ensued earlier in the afternoon. The rage in my ever-gentle husband. He growled and stormed at the rival he had caught in a heated kiss with his wife, her arms clasped around his neck. His reaction was mindless. It should have been anger at me, but he went after him instead, and it had led to the most frantic scuffle I have ever seen. As the stunned infidel, I could only gasp as the men traded blows. One for my honor, the other for my love, or maybe both for both. I started to cry and plead, till security was called to pull them apart. How dare you? How fucking dare you? My husband kept yelling. She's my wife. Mine. You bastard. How dare you? His rage seemed like he caught me under duress rather than the opposite. And the rival's poise enraged him even further because his response was said in that low drawl I have always known and fallen for. Yours? Man, she is not yours. She has never been yours. You will never know her as I do. Never. She is mine, and I'm hers. We have had what you could never recreate. Ask her. Ask her if I am lying. Just ask her. It seemed like that was the first time my husband realized I was there. The security men still had restraining hands on him. Looking at me with all the hurt and hope in the world, he asked, "He is lying, right?" It was meant to be a question, but I kept sobbing, saying, "Let's just go home, please, please, let's just go." I couldn't look at my troublesome ex-lover, bruised, painfully handsome, and angry. How could I hate him and love him all at once? My husband shrugged the security men off him and staggered backwards slowly, a dazed glare spreading across his face, wounded in pride and body. I went after him, but paused when my ex called me. "You know the truth. We've fought this thing long enough. You know where you belong." I had no desire to hear any further abominations, so I walked off, past the whispers and murmurs in the corridors. I met my husband waiting in the car, strangely calm. The drive was quiet. I was scared at first because I didn't know what his anger could lead him to do. One part of me hoped he would do something fatal, to me at least. I could tell the fierce anger was seeping out of him bit by bit, morphing into something. Resentment, hate, indifference. I couldn't tell which. We got home and remained in the car, quiet. Then he suddenly burst into tears. It sounded like the meaning of pain. He punched at the steering wheel a couple of times. In between sobs, he murmured, How? How? I had no words. Apologizing would have been an insult. So I got out of the car to allow him some privacy in his pain and drifted into the house. I undressed, showered, and poured myself a glass of wine which tasted like torment. Hours passed, and he came inside. With his composure regained, he only seemed like a tired mourner. That was when he asked if I'd always loved my ex as much. And that was when I started telling him the truth. Olaitan Akinfenwa is a writer who resides in Lagos, Nigeria. She works as a content strategist and navigates the terrain of digital communications and marketing for corporate brands. When she is not working or writing, you will find her reading fiction, essays and articles, or watching movies. You can read more of her work on her Medium page at Olaitan Akinfenwa, or connect with her on Instagram at Olaitan Akinfenwa _ or on Twitter at _Laitan _. Details will be in the episode description. If you've got a story you would like to be featured on this podcast, or a published book you want to make into an audiobook, send me a message at Osadumebi on either Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. I look forward to collaborating with you. And if you've enjoyed this week's episode, tell a friend that stories are a good escape for a few minutes each week.